If you've been on the fence about buying a home in Raleigh, North Carolina this year, then I actually have 3 really good reasons why you should consider waiting. Bet you didn't expect to hear that from a realtor. The first and most obvious reason why you might consider waiting, and this would be totally valid, is that prices are high and rates don't seem to be coming down anytime soon. They kept teasing us, yeah, we might lower rates, but we never actually saw any relief. And meanwhile, the house prices have stayed about the same or even gone up in price. To be honest, it really isn't a great market for first-time home buyers, for low-income earners, and honestly just for people in general because of the affordability issues going on, not just in Raleigh, but throughout the US. I meet people all the time who say, I really wish I bought in 2019, now I just don't even stand a chance, and I can totally relate and empathize with that. To give you some data into our market, the median home price here for a detached single-family home is $540,000. Now compare that to the average across the United States, which is about $470,000, and you can see that it's definitely more expensive to get into our market. Combine that with today's rates of around 6.5%, and the average monthly payment that you would have to have in order to afford a house in Raleigh would come out to around $3,300 a month, and that's assuming you were able to put 20% down as a down payment. And these are using numbers for the typical house in Raleigh. Now, if you look at some of our suburbs like Carver, North Carolina, for example, which is arguably one of the most desired and most competitive markets still, the median home price jumps to over $600,000, making it even less affordable. Now, although we aren't too terribly higher than the national average, I do not want to ignore all the many different markets, especially in the Midwest, that are significantly cheaper in terms of purchase price, and your money can go so much further. There's going to be some of you watching the video who are actually looking at other markets who maybe are already located in cheaper markets, and from a financial perspective, moving to Raleigh and purchasing a house might not be the right option for you right now. And for others of you, you might already be living in Raleigh and you're considering relocating with your job to another market where maybe home prices are more affordable, and that might be the right decision for you too. But for those of you who are wanting to purchase a home in Raleigh, you're not planning on leaving Raleigh, or maybe you're about to move to Raleigh and this is like your dream city, which is kind of what the case was for me and my wife, the question is, can I buy a house? Does it make sense right now? Well, there is certainly a chance that rates do come down over the next few months to years, but honestly, it's anyone's guess on if and when that will happen. I personally would love to see rates back in the 5s because I have some rental properties that I could refinance, and it would actually make it a lot more affordable for me to own them, and it would also make it easier for my clients to buy homes. In the interim, what you need to understand about the way the rates work is it's supply and demand. Of course, when rates are high, the supply is going to be high and the demand will be lower because less buyers are interested in the market. But when rates drop, let's say from 6.5% to 5.5%, that 1% drop is going to bring a lot more buyers into the market. And now there's going to be more buyers than there are supply, thus creating a seller's market. And when a seller's market happens, prices tend to go up. That's the unfortunate reality of what will happen, and it might not happen right away, but it will happen. So what should I do? Well, if that is your plan, then you should do a few things before those rate drops. First of all, you should be in a flexible renting situation so that you're ready to move as soon as those rates start to lower. The other thing that you should do is obviously start talking with a real estate agent like myself, with a lender, and getting prepared because we don't know when it's gonna happen. You should also have a down payment saved up and ready to go so that you're ready to be competitive and move quickly when those rates lower. Or alternatively, if you're not willing to wait for rates to one day drop and you really do wanna get inside of a house, but affordability is definitely a major issue for you, we might need to look at other locations. Maybe you really want to be in Cary, that's where you've been renting. We might need to look at markets that are just a little outside of it. For example, Holly Springs or Fuquay Varina, or maybe there's a suburb over on the east side like Knightdale or Wake Forest that offers more affordability, newer houses, and overall it's going to be less competitive while still checking most of your boxes. And that leads me to the second reason why you should consider waiting to buy a home in Raleigh this year, and that's that new construction is really hard to come by in the core parts of our market. So if you're looking in North Raleigh, if you're looking in Cary, it can be very difficult to find affordable new construction. And that's simply because we are running out of land. It's a bunch of older homes that are only getting older, and that scarcity with no competing new construction is making prices rise at a pretty fast rate. And what I tell people who say, I want to be in the best schools, I want to be, in prime North Raleigh, and I want new construction, well, do you have unlimited budget? Because it's starting at $800,000 or $500,000 for a townhome. It gets extremely expensive and your options are just so limited. Even if rates drop and affordability actually goes up, that doesn't change the fact that we have scarcity of land in North Raleigh and other parts of our market. So where should you be looking if you're still actively searching for new construction? I would be looking in Knightdale, I would be looking in Wake Forest, I'd be looking in Wendell, I'd be looking in Clayton. A lot of these east to northeast to southeast suburbs are some of the best areas where we're seeing infinite new construction popping up, and they're also throwing out a lot of incentives, not just closing costs. For example, I had a client who got $30,000 in closing credits, which is fantastic, but they're also throwing out great rate incentives. Just went under contract with another client where they got a 4.25% interest rate for 7 years. That is fantastic, and it's gonna make a ridiculously big difference in what their monthly payment could have been versus what it ends up being. And those new construction incentives are the solution, in my opinion, as long as your location flexible, to the people who say, hey, I'm holding off this year because affordability is such a big issue. Because I agree, a 6.5% interest rate in North Raleigh with North Raleigh prices is going to be a deal breaker for most people. And if you truly have your heart set on finding new construction at an affordable price in the heart of Raleigh, then I would say that that's going to be difficult this year and the years going forward. Now, the third reason that I would seriously hesitate about buying a home in Raleigh this year is if you know you're only gonna own for a couple of years and then you're gonna sell. And the reason for that is most of the benefits of owning a home financially are going to come into play after 5, 10, 15 plus years of home ownership. And we know that the average person only buys a home and lives in it for 7 years. And that's really when you're just starting to break into all those benefits of home ownership, like appreciation and loan pay down. Did you know that in the first few years of your loan, almost all of your payment is going towards interest, but in years 10 on, a lot more of your payment is going towards principal, aka equity that you get back when you sell. If you sell after a couple years, all you've really done is paid interest, and that's no better than renting. In terms of appreciation, our market is a strong growing market. However, due to the rates sitting high and the affordability, we are starting to see a little bit slower growth here, and it's certainly not the 2020 market that everyone saw across the nation. If you were to buy a home in 2019 and sell it 1 or 2 years later, of course you would have a ton of equity. You might have gotten really lucky and doubled the equity that you had in that house, but that is so unrealistic to our market and to really any market at this point in time. The typical appreciation that one might expect across the US is around 2 to 3% per year. Might be higher or lower depending on your market. Now, if you were to do the math, you would see why it would take owning that home for several years before that really started to be a large amount. Especially when you take into consideration that the typical cost to sell a home are around 7 to 8% of the price of the home. And if you don't have a lot of equity built into the home, that's coming straight out of your pocket. And we see this all the time, people selling 1 or 2 years later. Maybe they bought a new construction house because it had the low rates. Maybe they bought in North Raleigh. Doesn't really matter. They're going to sell now. They're thinking they're gonna walk away with a little bit of money. They end up walking away with negative equity. And it's very, very sad to see. Now, for some people, they don't care. They love the idea of owning their home, and they're okay if it's not necessarily a financial win for them. I don't know about you, but I was always told that owning my home is an investment, and that's why I should own versus rent. And I agree with that. with the caveat of it's only an investment if you hold it for the long term. If your plan is never to turn it into a rental, which is the strategy that me and my wife use, every year or two we move houses and then we rent out our house so that way we can continue to pay off the loan, as in our tenants pay off the loan, but also it's in a good market that is appreciating, and we know that long term we're gonna see all the benefits come back to us for that. But if we were just changing houses every year or two, we'd be better off just renting too. To show you what I'm talking about, let's break down some numbers. So if you remember the house that we talked about earlier where the monthly payment was around $3,300 in North Raleigh, well, that's not including utilities and ongoing maintenance, but let's keep it at $3,300 for now. If you were to rent that house, your monthly cost might only be $2,500 a month with utilities, but you wouldn't be on the hook for major ongoing maintenance. If anything big went wrong, that would be on your landlord. That's a pretty big gap between what it costs to rent versus own, and if you're only doing it for a few years, you would be much smarter to choose the renting option. Now, if you rent from that landlord for 10 plus years and that landlord has seen that house double in value, well then that's a different story and the landlord came out on top. So is 2025 your year to buy a house? I can't really answer that for you, but I've given you 3 reasons why you could definitely give yourself an out and keep on renting. And if that is the conclusion that you come to, then I respect you for that. I do also think that Raleigh is a great market to own a house in. I think it's a great market to invest in, and I highly encourage people to consider home ownership, but only if it actually makes sense for you in your situation. What I'd encourage you to do is call or text the number at the bottom of the screen, or just click that consultation link in the description to set up a time to chat with me and my team about what it might look like for you to buy a home in Raleigh this year or next. And if you're still on the fence, then just keep watching these videos, make sure you're subscribed. We'll see you in the next one.